Welcome to Hockey Night Online. I'm Monika Platek, and I have to tell you, it's so good to be back on the desk. Of course, I was away for a month over in Sochi, Russia, taking in all of that hockey action and coming back with a bit of a sore throat, of course. There was so much happening over the last couple of weeks, but here we are right back to the NHL and all of the news, the rumors, and the speculation surrounding this looming trade deadline. Of course, it is tomorrow, and today we're looking for your questions and comments as you're watching live with us. We are so lucky to have what I think is the absolute best inside source when it comes to hockey news and rumors. It's Elliotte Friedman from Hockey Night in Canada. Hello, Elliotte.
Good morning, Monica. That's because I make up half of them.
Are you the one that's tweeting all those rumors?
No, I really try to avoid doing a lot of rumors. I think it's hard at this time of year, but in this day and age, anything you say blows up really quickly, especially on social media. So I try not to create fires unless I absolutely know that I've got something worth going with.
And there really are fires everywhere, and I just joked. I said you and I are going to fuel the fire here, but we will get to a couple of those fan questions, the things that they're speculating about. But let's start with what was a wild weekend in Buffalo. Ryan Miller being shipped out, Pat LaFontaine stepping down. Now, do you think the Sabres are still at the table, or are they done?
No, I think they're going to try and do a couple more things. I mean, the whole Yarrow Halak to Minnesota thing is not dead yet. I know there have been a lot of rumors today that the Wild might trade for Martin Brodeur, but he's playing tonight for the Devils against New Jersey. And I think if there was anything really close there, there'd be no way that Brodeur would be in the lineup. So I think Tim Murray's been pretty honest about the fact that he's open for business, and I still think the Sabres will try and do some things. They have some bodies people are interested in. The only question I really have for him, and I hope to speak to him and ask him about this soon, is sooner or later you got to sign somebody to play for you. So I'm wondering which of the current guys the Sabres are going to look to keep.
Elliotte, you have to pick up that phone and figure stuff out.
Well, I put it down for 15, 20 minutes while we're on here.
Oh, okay.
I figure it would be rude to be texting and answering questions at the same time.
I respect that. Thank you so much, Elliotte, for your undivided attention. Now, moving on to the Edmonton Oilers, and they signed Ben Scrivens, known as the Professor, to a 2-year extension. And he joked around saying there aren't many jobs in the NHL these days. But seriously, what does this mean for Ilya Bryzgalov?
I think that Ilya Bryzgalov is on the market. I do know that Edmonton had offered him to Minnesota recently. It might have been as recent as last week when the Wild were in Minnesota after the Olympic break ended. They said no. So Bryzgalov is available. The other interesting one, and I think that's a pretty good deal for both Scrivens and the Oilers in terms of the $2.3 million cap hit. The other thing I'd heard is that the Oilers had interest in Michael Neuwirth from the Washington Capitals. Now, I don't know what that means for this interest, the fact that Scrivens is signed, but they're not only going to have one goalie under contract next year at the NHL level, they'll have more than one. So I'm curious to see if they're still going to continue their pursuit of him, or if that's done now that Scrivens is locked up.
Well, it's good to create that competition anyway in the crease. So we're going to move on now because we do have so many questions that are coming in here on Twitter. And this first one from Matt Scharf, one of those rumors that is really out there right now is all about Jason Spezza. So Matt wants to know, what's with the speculation about Spezza, and is there any chance for a trade involving him?
Matt, this is the way I kind of look at it. I don't think he's getting traded now. He's got a $7 million cap hit, and I think that's a very difficult deal to make in the middle of this season when the cap is a little bit lower. But Brian Murray, a guy who's been around hockey and been a GM for a long time, my suspicion is this. Spezza's heading into the last year of his deal, and if you're a general manager, you've got to have a plan. If he's not a slam dunk re-sign, you have to get an understanding of what his market value is if you decide that you want to trade him. Now, it should be remembered that Spezza has a no-trade clause and has final control over all of this, but I think it sounds to me what the Senators are doing is at least trying to understand what the market is for this player if they decide to trade him. That's my read on the entire situation.
It sounds like there is definitely some curiosity there, but GM Brian Murray seemed almost angry about these rumors and the fact that, they were gaining some momentum. So the
Mark,
next
one thing these guys don't like is us coming up with this stuff. That's for sure.
Okay, so let's squash it right there and
Okay.
move on and let the fans come up with this stuff because we know they'll do it anyway. Hark Sock is our next question here from Twitter. Moving out now to the West, which #1 D-man can the Canucks pick up for Burrows and a draft pick or maybe even 2?
Yeah, I don't think you're getting a #1 defenseman right now for Burrows in a draft pick. Ultimately, players are graded on their production, and while you think that this is not a normal year for Burrows, to say the least, he hasn't scored, and you're not going to get a #1 defenseman for a guy who hasn't scored in that particular draft pick. So I think if you're hopeful on that, you're probably dreaming a little too much.
I think Hark Sock thinks that Burrow's stock is a little higher than it actually is. Next one here, so we're talking about the LA Kings coming off a win last night, and inclined. I love these Twitter names. They're so very clever. Who are the Kings interested in acquiring? And if they do, who do you think they'll acquire for what? They really do think you're a mind reader here, Elliotte. I love it.
Well, I think the Kings made a phone call to the Canucks on Kessler. Well, earlier this year, the Kings had interest in Sam Gagner, a deal that fell apart for cap reasons. And Kessler only makes $200,000 a year cap hit more than Gagner does. And if you think that the Kings were interested in Gagner, and they were, I would be stunned if they weren't interested in Kessler. I don't think the Canucks want to do that. I don't think they want to trade Kessler into the Western Conference. So I don't believe that went anywhere. I think the Kings are looking for a left shot defenseman, and they're looking for a scorer. I think they would really be interested in Matt Molson and Marian Gaborik, especially if they felt they could sign one of those guys. Dean Lombardi does not like rentals, but one of the things I've kind of heard is that they're very interested in Andrew McDonald, the defenseman from the Islanders. But Gar Snow is asking for a lot for McDonald, and we'll see if that goes down over the next 24 hours. But I do wonder if one of the things the Kings have said is, we'd be interested in both McDonald and Thomas Vanek, as long as maybe that brought the price down a little bit. So I wonder if what the Kings are trying to do is get 2 potential pieces done in one trade.
Okay, so as interesting as that scenario is, I have to get you to follow up on Kessler because his name has basically been trending on Twitter for the last few days since the Heritage Classic. So what do you think is going to come of this Kessler situation?
I think the Canucks' preference is to trade him now and trade him to the Eastern Conference. I'm not saying it will happen. I believe that's what they want to do, but they won't make a deal just for the sake of making a deal. I think that the teams that are kind of in it are out there. I mean, Pittsburgh's lust for him is very obvious. I think the Flyers are in this. I think the Rangers are in it. The Vancouver Province reported accurately today that he's not going to go to Columbus. He's got a bad history with R.J. Umberger. I always wonder, Monica, if there's a stealth team out there that we don't know about. At this time of year, one of the things I've learned over the years is that beware the team you hear nothing about. And I've kind of gone over the Eastern Conference to wonder who that team is. Is it Boston? I don't think so. Is it Tampa? I think Tampa would be interested in a player like that. I'm just not sure they have the pieces that Vancouver wants. So I don't see who that is right now. But I do think that the Canucks would like to do the deal now, but I think they're going to try to play these teams off each other until they get a deal that they like.
I love that, though. That's why this time of year is so interesting and it is so juicy because you don't know who that sleeper team is, and then suddenly out of the blue they surprise you. So I'm literally, I don't know about you, Elliotte, I'm glued to my phone just seeing if anything's happening right now as we're speaking. But I did say there were some reports here about Marty Brodeur. We're not seeing them as true yet. But this next question from Jimmy Devs says, Marty is playing next year, so do you trade him now? I mean, he has to bring back some impact in return for what he's worth.
Well, I think the biggest question I've heard about Brodeur is this. He's made it clear that he's not happy with his playing time this year in New Jersey. And really, it is time for Corey Schneider to get his shot. And a couple of teams that might have an interest in a goaltender have said to me that they don't they would really, they think that Marty Brodeur might be a better off-season fit because they want to know, he says he wants to play more. Well, what does that mean? It's hard to quantify what that means because if you bring him in now and he still isn't thrilled with his playing time, you don't want to create a problem. So, the fact is that he's playing tonight for the Devils, they've announced. They're playing New Jersey, Detroit. It's a huge game for them, and he's in goal. So I don't think anything's imminent. The other thing I will say to everybody is that there have been two occasions in the last couple of years where I have asked Lou Lamoriello about rumors involving Martin Brodeur. And Mr. Lamoriello has always said to me, mark this down, I am never trading him. And until he changes his mind on that publicly, I believe that stands. I believe Brodeur wants to go. I believe he's made that very clear to the Devils. But I think there's a couple of issues there that lead me to wonder whether or not it will happen.
Okay, just writing that down. Just
yeah,
got it.
I think
Done.
Monika also too. A couple teams I would be interested in. Chicago. 2 years ago, when Brodeur was a free agent, Chicago was a team that was interested, and I think that could be a fit. The other one I think is kind of fascinating, and I don't know if the Devils would ever do this, but I wonder if Pittsburgh would be interested, just some insurance for Marc-Andre Fleury.
Wouldn't that be a crazy fit there with the Penguins? Okay, so we're still going to stay on the topic of goaltenders, and I mean, you saw it last night. Toronto Maple Leafs fans absolutely losing it because, of course, the Leafs have not picked up a win as of this Olympic return. And a lot of people are calling this the hangover, and it's true. Teams do experience it. But let's talk about James Reimer because, I mean, he has been such a polarizing figure, as has Bernier with this team. Do you see him going anywhere? And I'll take you to our first question here from Justin Marcos. He thinks Reimer needs a fresh start somewhere else because he is still that number one guy. And Justin's actually saying he thinks he has been treated not well, and it's been brutal to see what's happened to him. What do you think, Elliotte?
Justin, I would say this. The Maple Leafs have been very consistent in their position. They don't have another NHL-ready goalie in their organization. And you never go into a situation where you're chasing a playoff spot with only one such guy on your roster. So I think it doesn't make a lot of sense for Toronto to trade James Reimer unless they get somebody back who they believe can play right now. Do I think he'll be back next year? No, I don't. I think this is Jonathan Bernier's net. But until there's another insurance policy for this year, in case Bernier gets hurt or he loses his effectiveness, I don't see Reimer getting traded.
That's the thing. The Leafs would definitely want to have that insurance policy, as you call it. Okay, so then this is a scenario here from Crazy Sports Guy 8. How crazy is this? Reimer for Luongo.
I just, here's the thing about that. Last year, Toronto and Vancouver talked a Luongo deal right before the deadline, and it was too complicated a deal to get done. I don't think Toronto and Vancouver, are a great mix to make trades. There's a lot of personal history and bad blood between those two teams. I'm not 100% sure Luongo at the end. I mean, I guess now he'd probably go anywhere if he got a chance to go. I just think that if the Canucks are going to eat salary on this, and at the end of the day, they're probably going to have to if they ever want to make this trade, it's not going to be in that deal. I think they'd want maybe a bit more control. I ultimately think Winnipeg is going to make a big pitch for Reimer. It makes too much sense. He's from there. They need a goalie upgrade. I don't know if that deal, it doesn't work cap-wise either for the two teams. So I think it'd have to be something bigger. And one thing that these two teams have proven, it's very difficult for them to agree on very much of anything.
Okay, so before you go, a final question, and this one's coming from me. Do you think we'll see more activity today or tomorrow?
I always think it's going to be tomorrow because the deadline, it's like the lockout, really, Monika. Sometimes people need a deadline to get things done. And, I always think that there are moves there that we don't see coming. For example, last year, nobody saw Marian Gaborik going from the Rangers to Columbus. Nobody saw the Erat Fleischman deal from Washington and Nashville. Something always comes up that we don't know about. And the other thing is, I think there's guys like Ales Hemsky and Mike Camilleri who teams have said to the Oilers and Flames, look, we want to look at a couple other things, and if they don't work out, we'll circle back to you. And those are the kinds of decisions that are usually made tomorrow instead of today.
But really, who knows? That's why we are really on the edge of our seats as we await this trade deadline. And you were the best person to have on here today to talk about this. So thanks so much for joining us, Elliotte.
My pleasure, Monica. Have a great day, and don't make up any crazy rumors.
They're not coming from me. There are enough crazy rumors out there right now. All you have to do is log on to Twitter, and we're going to continue to follow them at Hockey Night on Twitter, on Facebook, and of course at cbcsports.ca. I'll be back on the air tomorrow, 11:30 a.m. Eastern, and of course we will be talking about either what has happened up until that point or what will happen with the trade deadline. So join us tomorrow. I'm Monika Platek. I'll see you next time right here on Hockey Night Online.